I want you to picture this for a moment. A daughter is sitting at her mom's kitchen table surrounded by piles of papers, old tax returns, insurance statements, passwords scribbled on sticky notes. Her mom recently had a health scare, and now the daughter is trying to piece together her mother's life. Bank accounts, medical records, bills, wishes. She's exhausted, scared, and keeps saying the same thing over and over. I just wish she had written everything down. I've seen this scenario play out too many times with clients, with friends, even in my own life. But when we don't get our affairs in order before a crisis, our loved ones are left overwhelmed and unsure what to do next. Hi, everyone. I'm Dale Corpus, a senior transition specialist and real estate expert based in the San Francisco Bay Area. Like many of you, I'm part of the sandwich generation, balancing family, work, and caring for aging parents. I created this podcast, Simplify Senior Transitions, to make these conversations easier. My promise to you, every episode brings real stories, practical tools, and expert insights to help families move forward with confidence instead of stress. And that's exactly what today's episode is about, replacing chaos with clarity. I'm joined by Stacey Tunteri, a life and legacy organizer who helps people organize everything that matters most, from vital documents and digital accounts to legacy wishes and personal records, so that families aren't left with chaos when life hits the fan. Through step-by-step checklists, accountability, and a lot of heart, Stacey empowers her clients to replace overwhelm with peace of mind. She believes that being organized isn't about perfection. It's about preparation, love, and leaving behind clarity for the people who matter most. Today, we're diving into how to get your life organized before a crisis, how to document your legacy in a way your family will thank you for, and how a little bit of planning today can spare your loved one a lot of stress tomorrow. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast, where we help families navigate senior living, real estate, and everything in between. Hosted by Senior Transition Specialist Dale Corpus, this show brings you expert insights, real solutions, and stress-free strategies to make senior transitions simple. Ready to dive in? Let's go.
And we're back, everybody. Stacey, welcome to the show today. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Let's start from the beginning. What inspired you to become a life and legacy organizer?
Well, I have always been a really detail-oriented, organized person, and I am a very curious person. So I'm always doing some kind of research and following some, going down a rabbit hole online. And I like to leave myself a breadcrumb trail of that information. And because I do so much research, it's very difficult to find what I'm looking for unless I organize my browser bookmarks and everything really well. So I now realize I've sort of been using organization to shore up deficits in the way that I naturally am inclined to do things. And so over time, that awareness has made me think, there are things I can help other people put in place that will simplify and organize their lives as well, and just create some more ease and flow. And then also in the last decade, my family has experienced back-to-back calamities that really showed me exactly what failure to plan looks like. So when disaster strikes or someone dies, a little bit of advanced planning goes a long way.
Yeah, I like that. So a lot of people may have heard of the term a professional organizer. And I know that, you help people organize their digital life, right? So
Yep.
Is this a type of professional organizing?
It is. I am a member of the National Association of Productivity and Organizing Professionals, or NAPO. And that is, I would say maybe like 85-90% of the people in that organization do more physical organizing. But there is a subset of us who do digital, anything that's related to the computer. That's kind of how I discovered this niche was even a thing. I didn't make it up. I actually had the seed planted by somebody else. So, yeah.
Yeah. And you've helped people in both professional and personal settings get organized. What was a turning point that made you focus on helping individuals and families instead of corporations?
Oh, gosh. When you work for a corporation, I think you probably will find this if you talk to a lot of people that work for larger companies, but it's hard for you to find that connection to the end user because there may be, 10 layers between you and that person that's actually being helped by the work that you do all day. So when I do professional organizing one-on-one with people, or even if I'm doing a class or a webinar online where it's me and a bunch of people, I can see them and I have that tangible satisfaction of knowing that I was able to help them. So it's a much more
Yeah.
satisfying work experience.
Yeah. Now, you talk a lot about getting your stuff together before life hits the fan. Why does this message resonate so strongly with your clients?
Well, almost everyone has either experienced a personal tragedy in their own life or they know someone who has. So when I talk about the events my own family experienced, it's not a big leap for most people to think, oh my gosh, this could absolutely happen to me. And I'm not trying to scare people with my story. I just want to paint a picture of what can happen when we don't prioritize getting organized or when we fail to plan.
Okay. Okay. And what kinds of life events typically make people realize they need someone like you?
Most Americans do not have a will. Something like 32% of us do. But among the people
Okay.
who do, they typically start the process as they're approaching retirement or when they experience the death of a loved one. They might do it when their family expands, like new babies, or like when they get married. Major life events tend to drive that decision. And another major driver is getting a serious medical diagnosis. So sometimes if
Okay.
somebody gets a scary diagnosis, they might feel more of a sense of urgency to make sure that everything's buttoned up. But I encourage everyone, regardless of your age or phase of life or how much stuff you think you have to leave behind, just start documenting your wishes now.
Okay. For those hearing about this for the first time, what exactly is life and legacy organizing?
Great question. It is helping people put structure, better organization, and better processes in place to manage their daily lives. And it's doing so while keeping the end in mind. So, in other
Okay.
words, if your life is very chaotic and messy, your death is probably going to be chaotic and messy too, which means your legacy might be more like a hot mess for your
Yeah.
family and friends when you go. So, I love helping
Okay.
people document the key details of their lives, like bill pay and financial accounts, subscriptions and utilities, passwords and login credentials, even your social media footprint.
Yeah.
Not to mention our value, leaving behind our values, memories, and final wishes. Like, have you captured your life story in writing? Have you recorded your voice or video for posterity? If you've got 30,000 digital photos on 5 different devices, can we consolidate that photo library and then curate and share the most important images so they don't die with you? Does your family
Mhm.
know what to do with your body or all of your stuff, or will they fight and argue about it because they're guessing what you would have wanted? So that's a lot of stuff, but I can kind of help with that full spectrum.
How is what you do different from traditional estate planning or financial advising?
That's another great question. I am not a lawyer or a financial advisor, but I can help make your intentions with those professionals more useful,
Mhm.
your intentions and interactions more useful and more actionable. So before an attorney even drafts or updates documents, I can help clients pull together an inventory of their assets and accounts, including the
Mhm.
digital ones. So decisions are
Mhm.
clearer and the drafting process goes a little more smoothly. And I can also help
Mhm.
organize the digital stuff like passwords, subscriptions, and bill pay accounts. We can even hatch a plan for your digital legacy, like what to do with, your Google accounts, Facebook, Apple IDs. Of the people who have a will in place, less than half of them say that they've told anyone about it. And having a will is really only helpful if somebody knows that it exists. So there is a lot of detail about a person's life that is over and above their bank accounts and legal estate framework. So I'm really filling the gap between legal and financial paperwork and what families need boots on the ground in real life to execute those final wishes. We're basically creating a roadmap for the executor so they know exactly what to do.
Yeah. What are the key categories people need to think about? Physical documents, digital assets, legacy wishes?
Yeah, financial is a big one. So documenting your bank accounts, retirement accounts, making sure you have beneficiaries and transfer on death designations for all of them, all of your bill pay and subscription. How do those things get paid? How about your tax record? And then
Mhm.
things like IDs, making sure that you've got birth certificates, marriage certificates, social security cards, passwords, military IDs, all of that stuff. Home stuff, maintenance records, deeds or titles, insurance policies, mortgage information, home inventory is a big one. And then medical records, a list of prescription medications is super important. Insurance information, doctor contact info. And then, of course, your estate planning docs. If you have them, you've got probably a will, maybe a trust, power of attorney, healthcare directives. And That's where you make all of your final wishes known as well. So even the details that aren't necessarily part of the legal estate planning process, it's like, who would you like to get what of your personal possessions and any other details
Mm,
that you want your family to know. And then lastly, if you have a small
mm,
business, that's another whole category that we should probably dive deep into.
yeah. Now, you say it's not about paperwork, it's about peace of mind. Can you explain that?
Yeah. And there's obviously paperwork involved here, but the reason for gathering and organizing is not bragging rights or because you have nothing better to do. It is to make sure that you can put your hands on your own vital documents in case of emergency. Or if something happens to you, your loved ones will know exactly where to find this stuff. So they know what step one is, who to call, and what to do. No guesswork. That's peace of mind.
Okay. Let's segue more into the emotional side of getting organized. Why do so many people put this off until there's a crisis?
A lot of people, especially in the United States, we have a culture that's obsessed with youth and an aversion to the
Hmm.
very idea of death and dying. So we don't want to talk about it. I think we think if we just ignore it and don't bother to plan for it, that it can never happen to us, but it's going to happen. So it's really important to go
Right.
ahead and plan for it. I also think that
Okay.
people have this idea that talking about it and planning for it will actually hasten it or make it happen faster. Not true. So part of my mission with my business is to help people become okay with their own ending and to make sure that happens on
Yeah.
their own terms. So you get to
Okay.
dictate what happens next.
What emotional barriers like fear, guilt, or avoidance come up when people start organizing their affairs?
This process can definitely prompt sweaty conversations. So when you start
Yeah.
doing things like identifying heirs or executors, let's say you've got three
Hmm.
kids and only one is going to be the executor, you might have to admit that you find one of your children is more competent than another or maybe better organized, and you'll have to figure out how to have that conversation. Like, hey, your sibling is going to do this because, whatever your reasons, you're probably going to have to provide some. And sometimes when people start to visualize their own memorial service or what people will say about them, their nervous system goes into fight or flight mode. So that can be really triggering for some people. You might
Hmm.
start thinking about failed or broken relationships or whether you want to repair them before you die. It brings up unfinished business, and that can be really scary for people. So it's important to tread somewhat lightly when we have these conversations.
Related question is, how do you help clients move through those feelings without judgment or shame?
Acknowledging exactly where they are and what they're feeling is super key. So, and also normalizing that because these strong emotions that we feel when we think about death and dying are extremely normal, very common. And I also try to understand what folks' goals are. I am not trying to push my own agenda. I'm here to facilitate yours. The planning process is a spectrum. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe somebody's never thought about their legacy plan and they're at a 1. I'm not going to insist that they strive for a 10 in our first session. I would work with them, to kind of develop a glide path that they can follow over time. So maybe we get you to a 2 or a 3 in the near term, and that's still progress and it's still worth doing.
Hmm. Do you ever see families come together or heal relationships through this process?
Yeah, I can attest personally to the fact that planning can preserve relationships. When you don't make your wishes clear, you're forcing your family to guess, and you're leaving the door wide open for hurt feelings, possibly arguments, and family rifts. And sometimes those hurt feelings and rifts can mend with time, but sometimes they don't. And the thing is, grief makes us emotionally dysregulated. The stress of it compromises our executive functioning, so we're not necessarily making the best decisions and probably not filtering our words as carefully as we do when we're not under this kind of stress. So, this is a time when we can say or do things that we can't take back. And fights break out over a deceased loved one's estate. It can do permanent damage. So,
Mm.
leaving your loved ones clear instructions makes everything you do, it makes everything about you and not them. And it can really prevent those fights.
Let's pivot a little bit. I want to talk about digital clutter and modern chaos. Digital clutter seems to be a growing problem. Thousands of emails, photos, passwords. Why is it so stressful?
One of my photo manager friends told me recently that we're taking on average 20 photos a day,
Okay.
every day, and that year over year, that number tends to go up by about 6%. So if you feel like your digital photo library is completely out of control and you're thinking, man, these are really piling up and I have more than I used to, you're right, you do. Further, almost every bill pay transaction is conducted online now. So our paper trail is
Right.
completely disappearing. Everything is behind a password or a locked account, and it's really hard for anybody else to get access to it, especially for non-digital natives. They often find it easier to organize physical files, but now that we've gone digital, they're not necessarily applying their own system of organization to their digital files. So anything that lands on a computer is like, if the computer's like a black box where you can't retrieve anything now. So
Mhm.
that is something I really enjoy helping folks, especially the not tech savvy ones. Like, let's figure that out so that you can feel a little more in control of it.
Yeah. Speaking of not so tech savvy older adults, seniors, what are your best tips for organizing digital life? Again, especially for those older adults who may not be as tech savvy.
Yes. Use a password manager. I know this is really scary for folks, but honestly, once it's installed and it's up and running, you cannot believe how much easier your life is as you're trying to navigate your online spaces. And if I can't convince you to do an online password manager, at least having a single place where you keep track of all of your password information, that's better than nothing. So even just a notebook. And of course, tell somebody that you trust what your method of password keeping is. So if it is just a notebook, tell at least one person you trust where it's located and make sure that if you update passwords, you're updating it there as well. That way you're not spending so much time hunting. And if you're using a digital password manager, most of them give you the ability to share passwords with specific
Yeah.
people. Or you can, actually, I'm not sure if any of them let you designate a legacy contact who would have access to all of your passwords, but you can leave that master password with somebody you trust so they can have
Mhm.
access if they need it.
Mhm. Okay. And how do you guide clients in documenting passwords, subscriptions, and accounts safely and securely?
Yeah, inviting a stranger into your home or computer, like if we were to work together, you're inviting me, a stranger, into your home or
Yeah.
computer. And that's a very vulnerable thing to do, especially when we're talking about things that you may not understand or be familiar with right away. There's
Yeah.
an inherent power imbalance there. So that's
Okay.
why my initial consultation is via Zoom, so you can see my face and ask me all the questions you like. And then if you decide you want to work with me, I'd prefer to do at least the first session in person. And that just gives us an opportunity to establish rapport and build that trust level. And then it also helps me start establishing safety baseline on your devices, like ensuring the latest operating system is installed so critical vulnerabilities are patched, or configuring privacy settings so they're appropriate for how you use your devices, or adjusting cloud settings, optimizing device storage and cloud syncing. So I find that the best way to guide people in this process is a lot of, initially at least, hand-holding and one-on-one time.
Yeah. Do you recommend any specific tools or templates to simplify this process?
Yeah, for password managers, there are four that rise to the top for me, and that's 1Password, Keeper, Dashlane, and Bitwarden. There's
Mhm.
also some compelling digital vaults out there, and you can think of a digital vault as the digital version of your filing cabinet, where all your vital documents they live securely online. And because they live in the cloud, you wouldn't lose them if your house burns down. And you can safely share either individual documents, document folders, or entire vital document categories with specific individuals. So the one I like the best is trustworthy.com, and I'm actually a trustworthy certified expert. So that's something I can help you set up.
Okay. I want to backtrack a little bit because I forgot to ask you at the beginning is where are you based out in the San Francisco Bay Area and where can you help people?
Sure. I live right in the middle of San Francisco. So I like to keep my radius to about 60 minutes one way. I will go further out than that, but I do charge for time in excess of 60 minutes. So
Okay.
there is some flexibility there, but most of my clients tend to be in Marin, San Francisco, and San Mateo County.
Perfect. Now, moving on to my next question I have for you. You often say, if it's not written down, it's a mystery. How can people start documenting their wishes before something unexpected happens?
This is something we really do not need to overthink. I mean, you can literally write it in a notebook. You can use digital tools like The way that I use 1Password in my own household is that it gives you the ability to tag your passwords. So I've created a
Okay.
tag that's called Stacey's Legacy. So if anything happens to me, my partner knows that he can click on that one tag and bring up the entire list of all of my accounts that will require his immediate attention. And there's step-by-step instructions on each individual account. So I've made it as easy as I can possibly think of. You can
Yeah.
use Google Drive. A lot of us have a Google account, so you can create a Google Doc and you can share that with your family. You could even use a 3-ring binder and just, maybe a cover sheet that says start here and just put some tabs in there to give people a way to navigate through it. And there's also a really great product called Knockbox. It stands for Next of
Okay.
Kin, so NOK box. This is a
Okay.
pre-printed, done for you file box that's got file folders with all of the major vital document categories and step-by-step instructions. So if you're very analog, that's a great solution for you.
Yeah. Nice. What kinds of information are most often forgotten or left out and later cause confusion for families?
Beneficiary designations that are either non-existent or out of date, digital assets like social media accounts, your entire online photo library, your online bill pay accounts. Not having a plan for these things can leave you really vulnerable to fraud and identity theft even after you die. A lot of people don't think about that. Also, titling your assets to reflect the name of your trust if you have one. You may have a medical directive, but have you thought about a HIPAA authorization? Because that's an extra thing that you might need in order to share medical information if something should happen. And then, not having a detailed home inventory can be a big problem because that also means you probably don't have a big plan for all of your stuff. A lot of us leave a house full of stuff and nobody knows what to do with it. And that can be really stressful for our loved one. And then finally, lack of communication. So even if you have all of these key pieces in place, if you're not sharing that information with the people who will need it, it's not going to be that useful. So be sure to tell people that you've done whatever you've done.
Yeah. Excellent. How do you approach conversations about end of life wishes without making them feel uncomfortable or heavy?
I like to bring it up organically throughout each piece of the process. So even if we're doing something simple like going through your photo library or installing a password manager, I just like to weave in some real life stories and anecdotes that people can ponder. And I'm very careful to fix my face and my tone of voice as I'm having these conversations because I don't ever want to make people feel bad about themselves or like they're being irresponsible or I don't know. I talk to a lot of people who feel kind of stupid because they don't think that they're good at computers. I don't think that I want to disabuse people of those notions because I think it's not helpful and it's certainly not what I do. So, and I also like to use humor.
Yeah. What can adult children do right now to gently start this conversation with their parents?
Keep the tone of voice collaborative, like you're planning with them, and try to not to make it sound like a lecture or a takeover. Acknowledge that it's a difficult topic and that it may require more than one conversation. It usually does require more than one conversation. Stay curious. Say things like, I'd love to understand what you want, or I want to make sure I get it right. You can set an example. You can say, like, I've been thinking about my own planning lately. I want to make sure I make things easy for others if something happens to me. And it made me think, I wonder what mom's plans are. So you're kind of teeing it up as, I'm doing this for me. Just curious. What are your plans, mom? And make things as easy as possible. Focus on empowerment. Keep decisions and preferences front and center. This is the ultimate gift of love. And I think focusing on
Yeah.
that takes a little bit of the punch away from thinking about death.
Yeah. Moving on. Legacy isn't just financial, it's emotional too.
Mm-hmm.
How do you help clients think about what they want to leave behind beyond money or assets?
I think folks that most people don't realize how many options they have in terms of how you can actually leave your personal stories behind.
Mhm.
There are some really wonderful online tools that help us with storytelling. So there's things like Remento and Storyworth are two services that will send you writing prompts on a weekly basis. They ask a
Mm.
question, you kind of do like a short form essay and send it back. And at the
Mhm.
end of the year, they consolidate all of that into a book and they print it and send it to you. That's a fantastic way, but you don't even have to be that fancy. Again, you can use a Google Doc and just start capturing, capturing your life stories. There are fantastic services here in the Bay Area. There's a company called Sound Legacy in San Rafael. You can sit with them and do anything from a simple like podcast format interview to a documentary style film of your life, which is pretty awesome. You can just pick up your phone. There's a voice memo feature. You can just record, just record audio yourself. So there's all kinds of from like we already have access to it free ways to capture this information to people that do some pretty slick, polished versions of it. So I just ask people, have you thought about it? Are you aware that these things exist? And sometimes, the answer is no. I had no idea.
Right. Do you encourage people to write letters, record videos, or document stories as part of that legacy then?
I do. I think a lot about, I've now lost my grandparents, and I really, really wish that I had recorded at least their voices. We lost my grandfather before we all had phones in our pockets, so it wasn't as easy
Yeah.
to capture his voice and his image, but like my grandmother, my whole family had opportunities and we never did it. And I'm sad about that now. So yes, I absolutely encourage people to do it because you don't want your loved one to be filled with these regrets later.
Right. How does this kind of planning empower families, especially during transitions like downsizing, moving into care, or after a loss?
Well, when you're downsizing, it's really helpful if you've already got that home inventory together because you can kind of go down it in paper form and start checking off, oh, these are things I can live without, or these things are super important. If you're moving somebody into a memory, if somebody's experiencing cognitive challenges and that's what's precipitating the move, they may already be forgetting things. And so that's why it's super important to catalog our intentions, our belongings, all of these details while we are still acute enough to do it. That gives your
Yeah.
loved ones, even if you can no longer make decisions on your own behalf, they have a way to honor your wishes. Super important.
Yeah. Yeah. And for listeners who feel totally overwhelmed, what's the very first step you'd recommend they take today?
Obviously, I think they should call me and get a free conversation started because, even if we don't work together, sometimes just having that conversation can be really valuable. Aside from that, I would say look at products like the Knockbox because it's just like done for you, pre-organized. It's like an organization system in a box. So that can
Yeah.
really reduce your overwhelm. I know I've really talked to death the password manager, but that's a good one. And then schedule an appointment with an estate planner or trust attorney if you have not done that already. Or if you have done it, it's a good time to review your paperwork and make sure it's still current.
Okay. And how can families make this a collaborative process instead of something one person shoulders alone?
Divide and conquer is a great approach here. So breaking the action items into chunks and distributing them to family members based on their zone of genius, because that way it doesn't
Yeah.
feel overly taxing for any one person. And also having a shared mission can actually bring the family closer together.
Okay. What are 3 small wins someone could achieve this week that would immediately make them feel more in control?
I think calling an estate planner or trust attorney, decide who your trusted decision makers will be and write that down. You may even just pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm starting to think about my legacy process or planning process. I'd like you to be my executor. How do you feel about that? Or I'd like to put you on my medical directive. How do you feel about that? That's something you can even do over text. It doesn't have to be a super big deal. And then if you're feeling highly motivated, just start writing down what any must know last wishes and communicate them with the people you trust.
Excellent. And finally, this is a 2-part question. How can somebody get a hold of you if they have questions they want to reach out to you to learn more about your services? And what message do you want every listener to take away about preparing their life and legacy?
I'll answer the second question first. So when you're no longer here, your legacy is all that there is. So it is super important that make sure that your heirs have an easy time settling your affairs. If you don't care if your heirs have an easy time of this, then you're probably not watching this podcast in the first place. I think if you're here,
True.
this is important to you. So I support that mission. And just so think about how you want to be remembered what you hope people will say about you after you're gone. Do you want them singing your praises because you left them these beautiful, clear instructions, or do you want them cursing you out under their breath as they're trying to figure out what you might have wanted? Think about what your heirs should keep and pass on, whether it's physical stuff, and also, like we just talked about, the historical context of your life. So thinking about all of that, planning for the end will help you live the kind of life that you want to live now, and it's a gift for those that you leave behind. So how you can reach me is you can check out my website at staceytunteri.com, STACEYTUNTERI.com. You can reach me via email at contact@staceytunteri.com. Those are probably the fastest ways to reach me. I'm also on LinkedIn, Facebook, Substack, YouTube, all the places.
Oh, so Stacey, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your heart with us today. I love how you reframed organization as an act of love, a gift we give to the people who matter most. What you shared today is such an important reminder that getting our affairs in order isn't just about paperwork. It's about peace. It's about leaving our families clarity instead of chaos and making life easier for the people who will one day need to help us. And for those of you watching or listening, if your loved one is considering senior living and you need to figure out what to do with their home, let's talk. Schedule a free consultation and learn more about my services at www.simplifyseniortransitions.com. Have a quick question? You could DM me anytime on Instagram at Sold by Dale. And if you found this episode helpful, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps more families discover the show. And please don't forget to share this episode with someone who's been saying, I really need to get my life together. This conversation might be exactly what they need. Thanks again for tuning in. Thank you, Stacey, for being on the show with me today.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And for everyone else, I'll see you next time on the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast.